Hi, I'm Diane. I'm 16 years old. Did something inexplicable happen in your life? Something you thought of? If I tell anyone, they will think I am crazy. And that's exactly what happened to me. One day, my things started to disappear and then appear in a very strange form. Watch this video to the end and find out how missing things drove me crazy. My parents and I never got along. They are very caring. Too caring. Overprotective, to be honest. I always wanted to be free. By the time I was 16, we had reached a compromise. My parents saved up a little and sent me to boarding school. It wasn't exactly rosy. Before leaving, there were a lot of scandals and promises that I would crawl back at the first difficulty. And I swore that the devil himself might come to me in the middle of the night, and it would still be better than my mother reading my diary. Anyway, my new free life began. Although, free was a strong word. The school schedule was even stricter than at home. As for classmates, let's be honest, I had never been popular among my peers. A geek with overprotective parents who couldn't leave the house alone at 16? Do you know that feeling when it seems that everyone around you is secretly laughing at you? That's how I always felt. And the new school wasn't much different. From the first day, I didn't succeed with my classmates. They'd been here almost since kindergarten, and I was new, awkward, and weird. I was joking at random, arguing about little things. Soon, all the conversation stopped as soon as I approached, and the empty seats at the tables in the library and in the dining room disappeared under bags and stacks of books, as if by accident. One girl, Clara, asked to copy my history homework, and I agreed so as not to spoil the relationship. What would you think? We both received a failing grade. Later, I learned from my roommate that this girl was some kind of local queen, and an F became my social death sentence. Now nobody could even talk to me without becoming an outcast. Well, at least there weren't any parents breathing down my neck. Popularity didn't interest me much. It was necessary to catch up with the material so as not to be thrown out of school for failure, to the joy of mom and dad. I kept my nose in my books, and every now and then I bumped into the jams or put my cup past a table. No wonder I didn't notice my things disappearing. I didn't know when it started, but the first thing I noticed was that the pen was missing after a couple of weeks of school. I put it on the table by the window in a completely empty room, turned away for a couple of minutes, and it was gone. It was a hell of a thing, I thought, and I was so surprised that I told my neighbor when she came back. Together, we laughed about it and forgot. But then, my blouse went missing. I immediately thought of the neighbor and asked her to return it. The neighbor swore that she didn't take anything and offered to look for it at school. As if I could undress in the corridor. And the strangest thing, the blouse was found the next day. In my closet, all in lipstick. Which I didn't even use. Which I didn't even have. Our rooms were locked. There was no one to do it except the neighbor. And we had a big fight. In the end, I demanded that we be resettled. I woke up the next day, and my slippers weren't in the room. Oh, they were found when the lacrosse team went out to practice. How could my shoes end up on the field in the grass and mud? I couldn't blame my neighbor. Then what if I went for a walk at night and decided to take off my shoes in the middle of a sports field? Maybe I was sleepwalking because I was overworked at school. I imagined calling my parents and telling them that I was having problems with my head as soon as I ran away from home. No, parents couldn't know for sure. My things kept disappearing. A bra stuck in the shower drain, an algebra textbook that disappeared the day before the test, and was found in the morning with the pages smeared with jam and peanut butter like in a sandwich. I tried to tie the locker doors with laces. I tried to take sleeping pills. Things kept disappearing. Eventually, my nervous appearance was noticed by others. The teacher gently talked about the difficulties of adaptation. My classmates were whispering behind my back. A couple of times I heard something like, "The ghost didn't like her," out of the corner of my ear, and it didn't help my mood. Trying not to show my fear, I asked the librarian if she knew of any legends related to the school. "Oh, nothing to worry about. Just a school legend about a vengeful spirit that haunts those it doesn't like to death. A children's story." Ha! Ha ha ha! A children's story stole my things and turned them into God knows what? Do you believe in the supernatural? I always thought I was a materialist, but this is where you start to believe that ghosts are out for your blood. I must have been really freaking out because I thought, why not talk to the spirit directly? So one night, I put salt in the circle, lit the candles, did everything like in the movies, and armed myself with a saucer and a homemade Ouija board. Nothing happened. What was I hoping for? I was so relieved that I slept the rest of the night quietly, right on the floor, and in the morning, I started cleaning up the mess. The commandant of the dorm noticed me with the remains of the candles, and I got a lot of trouble. I scrubbed the wax off the floor under her supervision, and she grumbled that girls like me should not be afraid of ghosts, but of living people. Maniacs, for example. I didn't notice it at the time, but by the evening, my missing dress, cut into ribbons, was neatly laid out on the bed. I looked at it and thought, what if my opponent was flesh and blood? The school building was so old, you never know how many secret passages there were. Yes, there was at least ventilation. Sleep was out of the question. I held my phone in my hand, ready to dial the emergency number as soon as I heard any sound. My imagination pictured my tormentor waiting for the right moment to spring at me from a dark corner, but I wouldn't give up so easily. I closed my eyes at dawn just for a few minutes, and when I opened them, my silver ring was missing from the nightstand. This was the last straw. I burst into tears. I closed the window and locked the front door from the inside, and I didn't go to class. What kind of assignments could I be doing when I was being haunted? Part of me knew that I'd finally gone crazy, but my body wouldn't listen. Even when they began to knock on my door, first the classmates, then the commandant, and finally the principal, I only answered hoarsely that they were all liars and I know that they were sent. Yeah, I wasn't all right. They were going to open the door with the commandant's key, but the commandant couldn't find it. Then they decided to break down the door. I kept getting sleepy. It was the third day, almost without sleep. Then I heard it, my parents' voice. I even thought it was part of a dream until my father started banging on the door. That sound would wake the dead. I had never been more happy to see my pushy, overprotective parents than I was now. I gushed about everything that had happened over the past few weeks, from the neglect of my classmates to the maniac who wanted my blood. The teachers and my parents looked at each other. My scandals, my strange behavior, now this nervous breakdown. I would have thought I was crazy if it wasn't for my damaged things. I couldn't ruin them myself, or could I? Maybe I would have left school and gone straight to the psych ward if it hadn't been for the commandant. First, we heard a squeal, and then we saw her dragging Clara by the ear. It turned out that the commandant found a spare key in her things. Clara was her niece, and this was not the first time she had taken her aunt's keys for her pranks, but the first time she was going to get some. I suggested that she correct the situation by giving me back the ring, and she looked at me with the most naive look in the world. What ring? Was she in denial even now? I was about to throw my fists at her when my mother called out to me. A crow was sitting on the sill of my window. It took some acrobatics to get to her nest in the tree, but there was a ring, a pen, and some other small things. Not just mine. Giving other girls their missing items made me feel like a strange Santa. I went home for the weekend and fixed my mental state with a bubble bath and a huge chocolate cake. And then I came back, because neither ghosts, nor maniacs, nor even more harmful classmates would prevent me from studying. But I will still call my parents every day. Have you ever had school wars? How did they end? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.
Hi, my name is Kelly. I'm 17. Did your loved ones justify their terrible actions with love? Did your Prince Charming turn into a monster? Did he do something unforgivable? Watch the video to the end and find out how my boyfriend terrorized me, claiming to show so much love. At our age, girls are already adults, but guys are just boys. It seems that they still think they can charm a girl with a collection of football liners or a story about a cool game. Boring. No romance. And I want an adult relationship. I want serious conversations, trust, and a guy to surprise me. And so that he didn't think it was a great surprise to put a rubber spider in my backpack. One day, my mother's friend stopped by with her son Zach. When I saw him, I forgot how to breathe. He was very handsome and quite grown up. And I was acting like a fool, blushing, giggling, and dropping everything. But Zach wasn't laughing at me. I listened to everything he said with my mouth open. I found out that he was once married, but something did not work out, and now he was absolutely free. My mother called me to the kitchen. She asked me if I was in love with Zach. I thought she would scold me and say that it could be seen clearly. But she said Zach was a decent guy, and if he was interested in me, she wouldn't mind our relationship. Woohoo! Dating such an adult guy. Have you ever dated a guy who is much older than you? Zach really started to take care of me. I felt like a princess. My first date with Zach was not at some stupid shopping mall or a movie, but at the theater. He was in a suit, and I was in a real evening dress, and he gave me a beautiful bouquet. Then we went to the museum, and then to a scientific lecture. Each time, Zach came up with something new and unexpected. I felt very grown up and smart, although, of course, it was sometimes boring. But for the sake of a serious relationship, you can get a little bored. I kept waiting for our relationship to become truly adult, that Zach would open the magical world of sex to me. We agreed that our first time would be at Zach's. I chose the most beautiful underwear, made a chic makeup. Zach didn't waste any time either. He cooked an absolutely awesome dinner. Even with wine, lit candles, picked up music, not cool, but so relevant. I didn't feel like eating. I kept thinking about how it would happen, how to behave, so as to not look either stupid and cheeky or too clumsy. At one point, Zach kissed me, holding me close, and I knew the moment had come. I reached out and turned off the light. Suddenly, something burned my cheek. Then the light came on. I didn't understand anything. Zach was standing over me, red with anger. I raised my hand to my face and my skin burned. Then I realized it was a slap in the face. He hit me. I dashed to the side. It seemed to me that Zach had suddenly turned into a monster. His eyes were so bright that I thought he was going to attack me and tear me to pieces. He suddenly relaxed and pulled me up to him and hugged me. He said I was a fool and I wasn't doing everything according to plan. He had it all planned out, first dinner, then dessert, then he would carry me to the bathroom in his arms, and then everything would be all right. And I just screwed it up. I killed his mood. It didn't work out that day, of course, and I was very upset. I finally got a serious man who thought about me, prepared everything, tried to make me feel good, and I could not accept his gift like a little fool. I really hoped Zach would forgive me. Zach did not take offense. The next day, he called me and said I was so great that he was willing to give me a second try. Again, there were candles, dinner, and music. I behaved obediently and tried to relax, but all the time I was afraid that something would go wrong and he would get angry again. So everything turned out somehow quickly and not too nice. Not at all what I had imagined. I didn't tell my mother. She was old and was sure that before sex, you need to walk hand in hand for a year like first graders. So I didn't say anything about the sex or the slap. The next day, Zach invited me over for the weekend. He planned every hour of our weekend together, where we would go, what music we would listen to, and what to eat. It sounded impossibly good. It was like reading a movie script about Valentine's Day. I threw my arms around Zach's neck, but then I remembered the slap and hesitated. What if I did something wrong again? Zach noticed it immediately and apologized for the slap. He didn't want to hurt me or offend me, but he was just very upset that I didn't appreciate his efforts. Sometimes he was abrupt when he felt at a loss. I just shouldn't make him mad. Everything should go according to plan. I asked him to forgive me for not being able to forget this stupid story and not trusting him because of one misdemeanor. We agreed not to mention it again. Do you think it was worth stopping everything then? Or is it impossible to forgive even one slap in the face? I asked what to bring for the weekend. He replied that the main thing was to not forget about good mood and charming smile. So cute. It was still a long way from the weekend. Zach and I met and made love every night. It was difficult for us to get used to each other. I was always doing something wrong. Sometimes I fell asleep too early. Sometimes I forgot to turn off the phone, and it rang at the wrong time. It also made Zach very angry that I went straight to the shower after sex. Once, he pushed me into the bathroom and locked me in. He said if I was in such a hurry, I could sit there. Yes, every time I made a mistake, Zach lost his temper. I even got a couple more slaps in the face. Sometimes I thought he didn't like me at all. I wanted to consult my mother, but I knew what she would say. And I was sorry to leave Zach. He tried so hard to make everything perfect. I guess I didn't try hard enough. But one day, I was in too much of a hurry to get home, and Zach gave me a bruise as a parting gift. I didn't realize it until my mother noticed it. It was useless to deny it, and I confessed everything. It was difficult at first, but it was a real relief to talk about all my doubts. My mother should have comforted me, but she only said that I was exaggerating the problem. Zach was a good guy. She had known him since he was a baby. Yes, the bruise scared her, but he had probably just pushed me too hard, not hit me on purpose. It happens. Sometimes people go too far. For some reason, this didn't calm me down at all. I felt very alone. I no longer wanted to spend a weekend with him, but how would I tell Zach? When Zach's mother dropped by again, I took a moment to pull her phone out of her bag. I found Izzy, Zach's ex-wife, in her contact list and kept her number. And as soon as Zach's mother was gone, I called Izzy. We met the next day. Izzy was very cool, beautiful, and not much older than me. Instead of hi, she told me that I'd badly covered up my black eye, and she covered it up herself. It was obvious that she had a lot of experience in this. And then she said that I couldn't adapt to the monster. I could only escape from it. I knew what she was talking about. Yes, Izzy left Zach because he beat her. She told me not to tell him about our meeting or he would get mad. At that moment, I decided I wouldn't say another word to Zach. I would send him a message that I didn't want to deal with him anymore. I walked home thinking about how best to write it. When I got there, I ran into Zach and his mother. My mother said I was late for dinner and told me to sit down at the table, but I said I wouldn't sit down and asked Zach to come out and talk to me. When we went out to the kitchen, I told him we had to break up. Zach was instantly furious. He swung and did it again. I closed my eyes and suddenly heard a ringing sound. Our mothers came at the noise, and Zach's mom dropped her cup when she saw what he was doing. Then my mother yelled that she would call the police if Zach and his mother didn't get out of our house immediately. That Zach didn't even have the right to look in my direction. And his mother babbled that she hoped Zach had changed. She knew everything in advance, but of course, she didn't say anything. When they left, my mother apologized for a long time. She said she should have believed me right away. Of course she should, but I should have told her after the first slap, instead of waiting until the last. Mom still talks to Zach's mother. It was hard for me to accept at first, but she's not responsible for his actions. But that doesn't mean I've forgiven her. Izzy texted me a couple of days later, worried that everything was all right, and said that I could always reach out to her if I was in trouble. This happens all the time, and I was lucky enough to figure it out. But not all such stories end well. Subscribe to this channel. Put a like and click the bell icon to not miss anything. Take care of yourself and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Hi, my name is Sabrina. I know what you're thinking. A name like that witch's. I really was a witch. Do you believe in magic? I believed. Until one day, when I paid a price for my magic. Listen to the rest of this story and find out how I was buried alive. As a child, I was a normal girl. I loved horses, fairy tales, and princesses, and other chick flick moments. But everything changed when I first watched Maleficent. The film opened my eyes. In all fairy tales, villains are better than heroes. So I decided to rewatch all my favorite stories. Soon, I got to Chilling Adventures. From the first minute, I realized this is about me. After watching Chilling Adventures, I decided to change my image and climbed into the attic in search of a suitable outfit, but I had no idea what I was going to find there. In one of the old drawers, I found a photo album of my great-grandmother. I flipped through the photos. Unbelievable! My great-grandmother participated in the Sabbaths. I ran to my mother with this album and demanded an explanation. It turned out that we had roots in Salem. I had to find out the truth. We arrived at my grandmother's house, and I started asking her questions. But unfortunately, my grandmother only laughed. Every girl in Salem at least once dressed up as a witch for Halloween. But they couldn't change my mind, because I knew I was a witch, and I was going to get my magic powers. For a start, I added more gothic to my look. Dark makeup, long black gloves, and a hat. Have you ever changed your style and felt like a new person? If yes, you can understand why I began to feel much more confident in my skills. I decided to start small, fortune telling for my two best friends. For example, looking into Kira's cup, I could see something that suggested the word danger. And just the next day, she flunked the test. The prediction came true. Looking at my friend Lisa's hand, I saw something that suggested the word love. And just 3 days later, a new kid appeared at school, and she immediately fell in love with him. Soon, Lisa asked to charm him. Well, how could I resist? I read on the internet about the rules of the ritual, and the next day after school, we performed the ceremony. It took 2 weeks, and at recess, the new kid came to us. He said that we had not taken our eyes off of him for 2 weeks, but we knew that magic had worked. The new guy's name was Rich. He was a good guy, but his friends? They were something. This was a group from a private school. Cool guys, goths, absolutely crazy. With Richie's help, we were able to meet them, and thanks to my magic and predictions, we were accepted into their company. But soon, the stakes increased. Rich managed to find the spell book in one of the old antique shops. I took it upon myself to test them. Sit ventures, Felix, deuces, I whispered to my friend, and on the next test, she was able to score the passing grade. Ut, maledistri, tibi, e respondissem, es pro passalis, I shouted, pointing at bully Mickey. After 2 weeks, we found out that she was expelled from school for smoking. But you must admit that predictions and witch-mongering are not quite what you imagine when thinking of a witch's magical power. I wanted to turn people into animals with a snap of my fingers, read minds, throw fireballs in the end. God, what a fool I was. In the Book of Spells, we found a witch's ritual, the complicated ritual that was supposed to reveal all of my magical powers. The ritual was just crazy. On a full moon, I had to drink a potion that was supposed to kill me. Then I had to be buried in a coffin, from which I had to get out by my magic on my own. At first, I refused. But every day, my curiosity and thirst for magic power were eating me up, more and more. And this crazy company, every day, edged me on. Let's perform a ritual. You want to become a real witch? After a week of constant persuasion and self-persuasion, I agreed. It was not difficult to prepare. We bought a coffin and also brewed a potion from herbs and animal organs. Don't ask how much we had to pay veterinarian clinic's cleaner for this. And now the full moon came. We gathered in the most remote part of the park where no one could distract us. Have you ever done something forbidden? Do you know what an adrenaline rush the very thought of it gives you? Copious veneer, I chanted as the guys circled around me in a mad dance. Copious veneer, I shouted before drinking a potion made from rat tails and cat glands. Copious veneer, I whispered, shivering with euphoria and excitement, trying not to throw up the potion. Everything froze. Everyone froze. And then I fell. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe properly, couldn't even control my eyes. Complete paralysis. My friends gathered around me, and one of them felt my pulse. She's dead, I heard my friend whisper. I'm alive. Does a dead person remain conscious? Panic washed over me. And then one of the guys said, we need to finish what we started. This is what Sabrina would like. I was picked up and carried gently into the coffin. Stop! No, don't bury me! I don't want to! But none of them heard my silent cries. None of them could read my screaming thoughts. They put me in the coffin. Rich carefully covered my eyes. Then I heard the lid of my coffin being nailed down. The box was lifted and thrown into the pit. I felt a thud, followed by the sound of shovels and earth. A bit of dirt got on my face. It became harder to breathe. I called up all my strength. A barely audible exhale, but no more. My friends made noises with their shovels for a long time, while my tears flowed soundlessly through my closed eyes. How long had it been? I lost count. I couldn't sleep, or rather, my body and my brain were already asleep, but not my mind. I tried counting, hoping to kill time. 320,131. 320,132. I peed myself. Now it became hard to breathe. I had a dream about my great-grandmother. She said, if you promise not to play with magic, I'll let you out. I made a promise. God, I promised with all my heart. Nothing happened. I could feel the worms crawling around me. I could feel my wet feet starting to rot. I felt like I was going to die. Great-grandmother, you promised to save me! Or maybe calling her was magic too. I wanted to die. There was less and less air, but it didn't seem to end. I couldn't swallow my tongue or hold my breath, but I wanted to die. The seconds faded into eternity. I was ready to draw my last breath, and then suddenly, the ground began to shake. I heard voices. The lid of my coffin flew off, and I felt a rush of fresh air. At the same time, I heard the voice of my friends. Ugh! Is it rotting? God, I'm gonna be sick! Then Rich said, it looks like the magic didn't work. I suggest we bury her and forget about it. I don't think they'll find her here anytime soon. I knew it was now or never. I called up the last bit of my strength, opened my eyes with difficulty, and began to wheeze. My entire company fled in horror, all but Rich. He grabbed my arm and felt my pulse. At this point, I finally blanked out. I came to my senses in the hospital, catatonic stupor. This was my diagnosis. Because of the stress, the pressure of the corset, and the potion I drank, my brain failed me, and I just lost control. And then I lay in a coffin for 3 days, slowly dying of oxygen starvation. My friends got tired of waiting and decided to dig me out. Just in time. A few more hours, and I'd be dead. Yeah, triple bad luck. The terrible quality of the coffin, the inaction of the police, who began to look for me only after 2 days of disappearance, and friend idiots who believed that I was really a witch. Did you foolishly risk your life? Tell us about it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There are many more interesting stories waiting for you.
Hi, my name is Rebecca. I'm 18. Have you ever been betrayed by a loved one? Could you forgive him? I didn't expect this from a friend. Watch this video to the end, and you will find out how a friend's idea to make me a webcam model worked out for me. I live with my parents in a big northern city, and it's my senior year. This is my third school. Unfortunately, for some reason, I don't get along very well with people. Or rather, they don't get along with me. That's why I had to transfer from one school to another. But despite this, in the first school, even in the lower grades, I managed to meet a wonderful boy who later became my best friend. And he was my friend until a certain time. Ray, that's my friend's name, and I were very close. We understood each other well. We always had a lot of ideas on how to have fun. Once, we painted Ray's room. Oh, how angry his parents were. Being on the same wave, we pulled a lot of pranks in our time. I treated Ray like a brother, neither more nor less. Now, everything is different, and it is hard for me to remember the time when we were so happy. You will hear all about it from here. We had a grand plan then. In the summer, after finishing school, we decided to go to the sea together. At the same time, we wanted to feel independent life ahead of us after school. Did you have a feeling that when you planned a trip and thought only about it? The thought of my best friend and I relaxing together at the sea warmed me every day. One day, Ray dropped off the radar. I hadn't heard from him. I was worried, tried to find out what was wrong with him, but I didn't have time. Ray came to see me. It was late in the evening and very unexpected. I was in shock, of course. Immediately let him in and started questioning about where he had disappeared. Ray told me that he had found a very cool theme and wanted to show it to me as soon as possible. I was intrigued. I was looking forward to him showing me some new incredible game or a cool blog with interesting articles. But Ray instead opened a website and turned on the video link. A very beautiful girl in her underwear appeared on the screen. I couldn't understand what was going on, so I asked Ray to explain it to me. Ray asked me to shut up and just watch. Then he turned to the girl on the other side of the screen. He told her to take off her underwear and lie on the bed, and she immediately complied with his request. I blushed with surprise and shame and turned off the video link. I looked at Ray and I was scared. I jumped away from him. I told him he was some kind of maniac and backed out, but he laughed at me. He said that I shouldn't worry. He was not doing this for himself, but for the common cause. He had a plan. He explained to me that through this website, we could very quickly earn enough money for our trip. I thought he was talking nonsense. I told him that making money online was not as easy as he thought. He didn't know much about it. When he heard this, he replied irritably that I did not know much. He paused, then added that I could appreciate this attempt to find money for our trip, not just criticize it. For some reason, I believed him, and I felt ashamed. I agreed to listen to his plan. The scheme was quite simple. We should find a beautiful girl who is ready to work as a webcam model and do management and advertising ourselves, and get a decent amount in the first month. Then he paused and looked at me intently. I got it. He wanted me to do this for money. I was so mad at him. Who did he think he was? I told him everything. I thought about him and his disgusting idea. In response, he called me a prude and left. We didn't talk for a while after that. This situation depressed me. I didn't want to lose him, and for some reason, I felt guilty. I soon decided that I shouldn't have been so angry with him at the time. It's just that we had different views on webcams. I texted him that I missed him and suggested that we meet. At first, he didn't answer me, and I was afraid I'd lost him forever. Then a message came from him. He wrote that he had no time to meet me. He was busy implementing his idea, looking for a model, and at the same time, a new friend. I realized that there was only one way to preserve our friendship. I didn't want to do this, but I wrote to him that I would agree to participate in his idea, but only if he promised that no one he knew would find out about it. Soon he arrived and joyfully informed me that he had already registered me and even found the first client who would contact me in a few hours. I started preparing. I ran to the store for beautiful underwear, made a good hairstyle and makeup, cleaned my room. I couldn't believe I'd agreed to this, and I was already wishing it was over. Have you ever had to do something that you didn't like? Go over yourself for the sake of your loved ones? How did you feel? When the client got in touch, Ray hid in the closet so as not to embarrass me, and I laid down on the bed in my underwear. A man appeared on the screen who was very unpleasant. A fat, unshaven man chomping chicken legs. I couldn't believe this was happening to me. I tried to contain my disgust and smile at the client. Then he ordered me to take off my bra and sit closer to the camera. I didn't know I would have to undress. I turned to Ray and he was nodding at me, showing me that everything was fine. Seriously? But I decided to go all the way and fulfilled the request of the man. He moved away from the camera and I saw his thick, hairy chest, beer belly, and that he was sitting in his underwear. I looked away at once. I was literally sick of him. The man looked at me for a while, asked me to stand in different positions, and I did everything he asked. But when he told me to take off the rest of my underwear, lie down on the bed, and I blushed and excused myself. I went to the closet and whispered to Ray that this was too much, and I didn't agree to this, but he tried to persuade me again. He said that if I left now, the man wouldn't pay, and everything else was for nothing. He also promised that this was the maximum and nothing more needed to be done. I believed him and returned to the camera. I complied with the man's request, lay down on the bed, and then realized that I couldn't move. My heart was pounding with fear, and I couldn't bring myself to spread my legs as the client asked. I could hear Ray in the closet asking me to continue, and the client was also getting impatient and pushing me on. It only made me feel worse. I was panicking, looking around the room for something that would help me. Then, my eyes stopped on the monitor, and next to my image, I saw a red dot. The icon for recording video. I jumped up, turned off the camera, and disconnected. I was ready to rip Ray to pieces. I pulled him out of the closet by the scruff of the neck and started screaming for an explanation. How could he take pictures of me without my permission? He tried to explain that he had turned on the record button by accident, but of course, I didn't believe him. This was not done by accident. I was very serious. I promised that I would tell all of his business schemes to his parents if he didn't come clean. It worked. He confessed that he wanted to sell the recording on the internet and share the proceeds with me. I was speechless. I couldn't believe I was hearing this from him because I trusted him. I sat down on the bed and started laughing hysterically. I screamed and scolded myself for constantly being led on by Ray's persuasions, and scolded Ray for forcing me to become practically an online prostitute for money. I pointed Ray out and told him to stay out of my sight, said I didn't think I could ever trust him or treat him the same way. Before he left, Ray asked me not to tell his parents what had happened. I agreed if he would promise never to write or call me again and delete all the recordings of me. Ray agreed and left. I was left alone. I went to the mirror and looked at myself. It made me feel incredibly sick to realize what I'd been doing. I realized that I was so afraid of being a traitor to Ray that I didn't notice the real betrayal on his part. When I came to my senses, I immediately deleted my account from the disgusting site and erased all conversations with my former friend, wanting to forget about everything. We haven't spoke since. Apparently, childhood friends don't always stay with you for life. By the way, I haven't forgotten about my dream to go to the sea. I worked as a barista in a coffee shop and earned the trip. If you like my story, please like and subscribe to the channel and never be a pushover for questionable ideas.
Hi, my name is Maggie. I'm 17. Have you ever been humiliated in public by people whom you don't expect that at all from? For example, your best friends or relatives? Maybe even someone you love? This happened to me. Watch the video to the end and find out how I ended up locked in the toilet and embarrassed myself in front of the whole school. I go to the same school as my younger brother, Steve, who is 14. But he wants to appear older and cooler than he really is. And if it wasn't for his football coach, I wouldn't be talking to Steve at all. My brother pisses me off with his stupid ideas. He always repeats everything after me. I started a profile on the social network and he also pulled up. I started shooting funny videos and posting them. He also decided to engage in video blogging and asked his parents for a camera for his birthday. Steve annoyed me, but his football coach, Dave, was on my mind. He's 20, tall, athletic, and he has a gorgeous smile that drives me crazy. I went to my brother's training just to get a look at Dave in case he noticed me. But I didn't have much of a chance. All the girls at school wanted to date him. One day at breakfast, Steve said that he had come up with another brilliant idea and if I could help him with it. I was about to send him away with a flea in his ear, but then he said that he would introduce me to the coach. They were going to have a demonstration training, but only if I agreed to help him with some horror videos. I nodded, not even asking questions. I really wanted to get to know Dave. What did you do to get to know the person you crushed on? At school, Steve sent me a text message during class. He wrote that he was waiting for me in the teacher's bathroom. It seemed a little strange, but I already agreed, especially since Dave was worth it, and I refused to backtrack. I took a break from class and went to the bathroom. Steve was waiting for me, his phone already in recording mode. He asked me to enter the toilet stall slowly and without turning around, like it had to be done. Well, since I agreed to help, I went in there, but the door suddenly slammed behind me and Steve closed it from the outside. What the hell? I was beginning to wonder if this was a good idea, but he calmed me down and said that he was going to get the props right away and we would continue later. I was locked in the teacher's bathroom. Recess would be soon. All the teachers would gather here and see me. It would be weird and stupid. I was asking for a doctor's leave from class and then it turned out that I was stuck in the toilet. I had to get out of there. I called Steve and demanded to be released. And he asked me not to be nervous, said that he would come soon and we would continue shooting. And then I smelled a rat. Steve was still missing. I could have written to my friends to save me, but I was ashamed to admit that my brother had tricked me. I sent Steve a text message demanding my immediate release, and almost immediately he showed up. I yelled at him and threatened not to take him to any more parties. Steve didn't seem to notice me. I fell silent, listened, and realized that he was with his boys. They were whispering behind the door and laughing. They cracked up. I got angry and shouted that I would be the last to laugh. And after that, I saw a drone with a camera flying over my head. What fools they were! They were making fun of me! I jumped up and caught their toy and threw the drone on the floor with all my might and started trampling on it.
Steve was tense because I broke his device. I thought he would come to his senses and realize that he was joking with his sister for nothing. And he said he wouldn't let me out. That was a bust. The boys left. Then the bell rang for recess. Failure was inevitable. Teachers started coming into the bathroom. I hoped they wouldn't notice me. I should have waited it out, and then I would have found a way to get out of this shit. I closed the stall from the inside so no one could get in. Teachers went into neighboring toilets, did their dirty work, and left. Mrs. Meisel, the English teacher, had obviously eaten something wrong for breakfast. She sat for a long time in the next booth, making terrible noises, and there was such a smell that I could barely hold back vomiting. I had to stuff my nose. If she knew I was around, she would definitely fail me in English out of spite. Mrs. Popper, my math teacher, was also here and discussed me with the principal. She said I was completely undisciplined. I left lessons when I wanted to. I was ready to sink through the floor. I knew too much, and if they had found me, they would have killed me. Yes, jokes always saved me from panic. But when I saw Dave enter the bathroom, I realized that humor was powerless. I was lost. How do you deal with your panic? Now he would notice me and I would die of shame right here in the toilet. What a shameful death. I held my breath, not wanting to be discovered. And Dave was almost gone and didn't notice me, but then my phone rang. My friend decided to remember me at the most inopportune moment. I quickly turned off the phone, but it was too late. Dave heard the sound and came to my booth. He tried the door, surprised that it was still closed from the outside. He wondered who was sitting in there and if everything was all right. I didn't know what to do. I hastily wrote to a friend, asked her to run to the toilet and urgently save me. She probably didn't understand what I wanted from her at all. I was not myself. I was in a panic. Then I heard Steve's voice saying hello to Dave. My brother was back, but he clearly didn't expect to see a coach here. Steve was a little confused. Then I texted him to stop being stupid and get Dave out of here. Steve's phone slipped out of his hand because of the vibration, and Dave picked it up and saw my message. This was a complete failure. In the meantime, I already had thought about transferring to another school. Dave looked sternly at Steve and told him to explain what was going on, or he wouldn't let him into the match. Steve apologetically admitted that he had played a trick on me by locking me in here. What a slob my brother is. He could deny and hold the defense, and he gave himself up, and at the same time me. I heard the latch open. There was nothing to do. There was no point in hiding anymore. I opened the door on my side and came out all red with shame and anger at my brother. Steve said he'd bet his friends that he'd easily trick me and lock me in the teacher's bathroom. He wanted to show off in front of the boys and look like a cool dude. But it was a mistake, and he was sorry for what happened and apologized to me. Dave was my savior. That's how we met. I imagined it a little differently. Dave sternly told Steve that for his offense, he had a penalty practice today after school, so he would be waiting for him in the hall, and the bell had already rung for the lesson and it was time for him to go to class. I wanted to get out of here as fast as I could, and I followed my brother, but Dave asked me to stay and talk about what had happened. He had a friendly tone, and I couldn't refuse him. I stayed. Dave smiled sweetly at me, opened the stall door, and suddenly put his hand on my waist, then pinned me in this very stall. Why would he do that? Why did he think I would give myself to him here and now? Yes, I liked him madly, but not that much. In fact, he was just as stupid as my brother. But he was strong. How was I supposed to get out of here and leave? And then my friend, whom I had written to earlier, burst into the toilet. She was a little late, but it was for the best. Katie noticed my legs sticking out from under the door, opened the door, and screamed in surprise when she saw Dave on top of me. My friend's scream distracted Dave, and I pushed him away and ran out of the bathroom. I started to feel sick again. I was disgusted that he was such a jerk. I had always wanted to date this jerk. Now I didn't want dating him anymore, and I didn't want my brother to study with that scumbag. I decided to go to the principal as soon as possible and tell him what had happened. What if this was not the first time, and at the hands of this maniac, another girl could have suffered? This was not something to be let down. After a while, the police appeared in the corridor looking for Dave. With a sense of moral satisfaction, I went to look for my brother. My brother was at the gym. I told him he could go home because Dave was going to be training prisoners in prison now. I told my brother all about Dave. He got angry and wanted to get to Dave. And then he started apologizing because it was all because of him. I told my brother if he wanted to be cool, he needed to understand that coolness was not achieved at the expense of humiliation of others. If you like my story, please like and subscribe to my channel. I hope you meet only decent people in your life.